My brother's fiancée framed me for stealing her expensive ring because I didn't follow her on Instagram. Then her drunk brother exposed everything. 21F, never thought I'd be making a post like this, but the events of the past few months have left me completely devastated. I need some perspective on whether I'm handling the situation right because my entire family seems to think I'm the villain here. For context, my brother Ryan, 28M, has always been the golden child of our family. Since we were kids, he could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. He excelled at everything: academics, sports, social life, while I struggled to meet their expectations. Ryan went to an Ivy League college, landed a high-paying job at a prestigious firm, and basically lived up to every expectation my parents had. I, on the other hand, was always seen as the problematic child. When I was younger, I did act out quite a bit. I skipped classes, hung out with what my parents called the wrong crowd, and generally rebelled against their strict rules. I wasn't a bad kid, I never did drugs or got into serious trouble, but compared to Ryan's perfection, I was seen as a disappointment. Things got really bad when I was 16. I got caught sneaking out to a party and my parents grounded me for months. Ryan, who was 23 at the time, took their side completely. He gave me this long lecture about how I was embarrassing the family and needed to grow up. That was the turning point in our relationship. We went from being somewhat close siblings to barely speaking. Despite what my family thinks, I did eventually get my act together. I'm now in my final year of college, maintaining a 3.5 GPA and working part-time to support myself. But it seems like my family is stuck in the past, always waiting for me to mess up again. Ryan met Samantha, 26F, 2 years ago at some fancy charity event. She comes from a wealthy family and works as a marketing executive at her father's company. From the moment they started dating, everyone in our family was obsessed with her. My mom constantly praised her class and sophistication, and my dad was impressed by her family connections. I never really clicked with Samantha. She's the type who posts every detail of her luxurious life on Instagram: designer clothes, expensive vacations, fancy restaurants. She would often make subtle comments about my simple lifestyle and how I should try to be more presentable. Once, at a family dinner, she actually suggested that I should let her take me shopping because my clothes were too casual for family gatherings. When Ryan and Samantha got engaged 6 months ago, my parents were overjoyed. The engagement ring was a massive 3-carat diamond piece that probably cost more than what I make in a year. Samantha never missed an opportunity to flaunt it, especially when I was around. The engagement ceremony last month was exactly what you'd expect from Samantha: over-the-top expensive at an upscale restaurant I could never afford to eat at. I only went because my parents insisted, and I brought my best friend, L, 21F, as moral support. To be honest, I mainly kept to myself during the event, only interacting when necessary. Everything was going fine until about halfway through the evening. Samantha suddenly started making a huge scene, frantically searching her purse and looking around her seat. She announced, in a dramatic voice, that her engagement ring was missing. She had apparently taken it off to wash her hands. Who does that at their own engagement ceremony? And now couldn't find it. Everyone immediately jumped into action, searching the restaurant. I was looking under some tables when Samantha suddenly pointed at me and screamed that I must have stolen it. Her exact words were, "I saw her lurking around my purse earlier." She's always been jealous of what Ryan and I have. The accusation was so absurd that I actually laughed at first, thinking it was some kind of joke. But then Ryan stepped in, backing up his fiancée. He said he had noticed me eyeing the ring all evening with an envious look. The fact that my own brother would think I'd steal anything, let alone something so expensive and meaningful, felt like a punch to the gut. What happened next was like a nightmare. Samantha's friends started chiming in, claiming they had seen me acting suspicious around her belongings. My parents, instead of defending their own daughter, looked at me with such disappointment. My mom actually said, "Just give it back, honey. We won't be angry if you return it now." The worst part was when Ryan called the restaurant security to search me. I refused, stating that I shouldn't have to prove my innocence when there was zero evidence against me. This only made everyone more suspicious. My dad pulled me aside and said, in this tired voice, "Why do you always have to make things difficult?" The only person who stood by me was Elle. She tried to reason with everyone, pointing out how ridiculous the accusation was and how there was no actual proof, but her voice was drowned out by Samantha's crying and my family's accusations. I ended up leaving the ceremony in tears, with Elle driving me home. The next few days were hell. Ryan kept calling and texting, threatening to file a police report if I didn't return the ring. My parents showed up at my apartment trying to talk sense into me. Even my extended family got involved, with aunts and uncles calling to express their disappointment. A week after the incident, Samantha suddenly announced that she had found the ring in her car. But instead of apologizing, she implied that I must have planted it there after realizing I couldn't sell it. Ryan fully supported this theory, and my parents were just relieved the situation was resolved. No one seemed to care about how this false accusation had affected me. No one apologized for assuming I was a thief. My own family had shown me exactly what they thought of me. I was still that troubled teenager who couldn't be trusted. I've cut contact with Ryan and Samantha since then. I only speak to my parents when absolutely necessary. Elle thinks I should fight back somehow and clear my name, but I don't see how when my entire family has already decided I'm guilty. I refuse to apologize and maintain my distance. Should I just say sorry to keep the peace, even though I'm innocent? When nobody seemed convinced, she actually tried to blame me, claiming I had orchestrated the whole thing to ruin her reputation. It was such a desperate attempt that it only made things worse. At that point, I realized how truly manipulative Samantha was and how easily everyone had fallen for her lies. My family was in shock, and the tension in the room was unbearable. I felt a mix of relief and anger, finally exposing the truth, but the pain of seeing how everyone reacted to the situation lingered. My parents were in disbelief, not knowing who to blame. My mom's tears seemed genuine, but I couldn't help but feel a sense of betrayal. She had been the one to suggest I might have stolen the ring, even though there was no evidence. It hurt to see her cry, but part of me knew she was crying more for the broken image of her perfect family than for me. My dad, on the other hand, barely spoke. He looked at me with a mix of disappointment and anger, like I had somehow tarnished the family's reputation. My aunts and uncles were in disbelief, not knowing how to process the situation. Ryan sat there, avoiding eye contact with me. He never once spoke up to defend me during the whole ordeal, and his silence now spoke volumes. I was no longer his problematic younger sister to fix. Instead, I was the one who had dared to stand up for myself, and that didn't sit well with him. His indifference to what was happening to me was incredibly painful. As for Samantha, she never truly took responsibility for what she had done. Even after all the evidence, she continued to deflect, pointing fingers at everyone else but herself. It was clear she cared more about saving face than admitting her faults. Eventually, the conversation died down, and the dinner became painfully awkward. My mom tried to move the conversation forward, but no one was really paying attention. My relatives were all whispering among themselves, and the tension was palpable. After the longest silence, I stood up to leave. I had nothing more to say to any of them. Before I left, I turned to my mom and said, "I didn't do this. I didn't steal the ring, and I didn't deserve to be treated like a criminal. You and Dad didn't trust me, but you trusted Samantha, who lied about everything. I won't apologize for standing up for myself." With that, I walked out. Elle followed me, offering silent support. The car ride back was quiet, but I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. I had finally spoken my truth, and even if my family couldn't see it now, at least I knew I had done the right thing. The fallout from that dinner was intense. Samantha's parents were furious with her, and although they didn't directly confront me, it was clear they were upset by her behavior. They had no idea that she was capable of such manipulation. Ryan, unsurprisingly, has distanced himself even further. We haven't spoken since the dinner, and I don't expect we ever will again, at least not in the same way. I think he was more embarrassed than angry. As for my parents, the relationship has been strained, to say the least. My mom has tried calling, but I've ignored her calls for now. I need space to process everything. I've heard from a few extended family members who expressed their disappointment in me for exposing the truth at the dinner, saying I should have handled things privately. But honestly, I don't regret it. I finally stood up for myself in a way that my family has never seen before, and it felt empowering. Elle has been my rock, through all of this. She's the only person who really believes me, and she's even offered to testify if this goes any further. I'm considering legal action, especially since the defamation has been so damaging to my reputation. But the thought of dragging this out further is exhausting. I just want to move on with my life, but part of me wants to ensure that Samantha pays for what she did, not just to me, but to everyone she's hurt along the way. I'm not sure what my next step is, but I'll keep you all updated. Thank you again for the support. It's been overwhelming in the best possible way, and I'm so grateful for all of your advice and encouragement. You've helped me more than you know.